It's finally time for my FNCS Global Championship predictions video, and in this video I'm going to go over my top 15 predictions for the FNCS Global Championship and show you where every team is landing, and also go over the team changes if you guys have missed those up until this point. Now, before I get into my predictions, remember these will be my personal rankings, and I'm going to try and explain why I have each team in each spot. So if you guys don't agree with the team I predict, make sure to comment down below your predictions. And also, if you are new to the channel or a returning viewer and not yet subscribed, this is a perfect time to subscribe to the channel. And let's try to reach 15,000 subscribers off of this video. Now let's get into the video, and the first thing I want to go over is who is not playing and what the fill duos are going to be for LAN. If you guys have missed all of this news, which has been happening the past couple of weeks, and the players that will not be attending the LAN that were previously qualified is Turtle, who is missing the LAN for personal reasons, Arrow, Milo, Knight, and Vanya, who will not be playing at the LAN due to visa issues, and then Pixo, who will not be playing at the LAN due to his account being inactive / banned. And then the replacement players / duos for the LAN will be Cheeps and Iamzo. Iamzo will be replacing Turtle. Gon and Kwani. Kwani will be replacing Knight. Agers and Rise, they will be replacing the Middle East duo of Pixo and Milo. Swizzy and Yapko. Yapko will be replacing Vanya. And then Wixie will be playing with Crisp, who will be replacing Arrow. And those are all the duo changes for the LAN. And now let's take a look at the drop map, and we're going to start going over my predictions for the LAN. And I'm just going to be going over my top 15 predictions in this video. If you guys want to ask questions about maybe why I have teams not in my top 15, put those in the comments below and I'll try to reply. But first, I want to go over my top 3 picks. And the reason I want to go over my top 3 is because I had Cammy and Seti as my favorites pretty much the whole entire time leading up until the Global Championship. But recently, I did decide that I was going to drop Cammy and Seti to my number 3 predicted spot. And I think this because of 2 reasons. I think this because of the 2-day format, the 1.5 times points multiplier on day 2. And I think that's really going to boost these teams I have ahead of them. I have Vico and Flixie, who are landing uncontested Reckless Railways. And then I have Peterbot and Poyo, who are landing the Raft. And I do think Peterbot and Poyo are a pretty risky pick, because at the end of the day, they are landing the Raft, which is currently quad contested. And here's the layout of what the Raft might be looking like for the FNCS Global Championship. And as you guys can see, we have Peterbot and Poyo on the right, who might be uncontested. It's really up to Kazi and Aspect and what they do. Trashy and Threats landing like the northwest and the west side. And then Swizzy and Yapko landing the southwest side, pretty much uncontested there maybe, unless they fight Trashy. So overall, I see why some people weren't predicting Peterbot and Poyo to win because of what this off-spawn situation could end up being. It could be pretty grief for Peterbot. But if Peterbot does make it out of off-spawn, they are going to get the forecast every single game, and they're also going to get that bunker as well every single game. And I think with the Mythic Og, forecast tower, and a bunker every game, I just don't see how they can't win with that. But I also think this is my riskiest pick, as you never know what happens with them. They could get 50-50'd by the OC team Kazi and Aspect, or more teams could maybe land on them day 2. You never really know. But I do have Peterbot completing the back-to-back-to-back and almost a perfect year, and completing the greatest year in Fortnite history, winning 3 FNCSs and getting a second, while also taking home a LAN win. Then in second place, I have Vico and Flixie. Like I mentioned, Uncon Reckless Railways. Now, the one thing with Vico and Flixie is, are they going to fight Bryson Bolts for the forecast tower? We don't really know the answer to that yet. I think they're going to have well enough loot to not fight for the forecast tower, and they could just play normally, and they can do very well if they play normally. But who knows what they're going to do? We're just going to have to wait and see. And then moving on to third place, I have Cammy and Seti. And the reason I moved Cammy and Seti down, because I just don't really think they have the ability to beat out a team like Vico Flixie or Peterbot Poyo on day 2 when the points are worth more, as Cammy and Seti aren't really the most fraggy team there is. They're not going to get a lot of eliminations, so I'm just going to take the 2 heavy fragger teams over them, and that's why I have Cammy and Seti in third. Then moving on in fourth place, I have Batman, Booga, and Rapid. And this has been one of the most consistent NA teams over the past 2 seasons. And I think them having Grimgate uncontested is going to be very beneficial for them in Globals this weekend. And I think they're going to once again have a very solid performance, because every single time they are uncontested, they do very well. And I expect them to do very well yet again and top 4 LAN. And Batman, Booga, and Rapid also played pretty well last year at the FNCS Global Championship. So the LAN experience as a duo is there, and I think they're going to build off of their 16th place last year and get a top 4 this year. Then in 5th place, we have one of the fan favorites, Clicks and Vino. And I think Clicks and Vino could finish higher than 5th place, but I haven't really loved how they've been performing without the forecast tower so far this season and kinda in general. But I think Clicks and Vino will be fine, and even with me not really loving how they've been playing, I still think they're going to do very well and get top 5, and they're probably going to end up getting the forecast tower a couple times, because there's no way Peterbot and Poyo aren't going to have a game where one of them maybe dies, or maybe both of them die off spawn. So I just don't see a world where Clicks and Vino don't get the forecast tower once or twice, maybe even 3 times this weekend. And I think 5th place is a really good landing spot for Clicks and Vino, and I also could see them doing even better. Then in 6th place, we have Trulex and Chicho, and this is also a pretty risky pick for me, as I think Trulex and Chicho kinda are going into the Global Championship slightly overrated in my personal opinion, but I think with how good they are getting Surge, that's going to be very, very beneficial to them in this Globals lobby, and I think without a doubt this team's going to end up getting top 10. I don't know if I love putting them 6th place, but I think with this spot uncontested and how good they are getting Surge, I really do think they should get 6th place. Then next in 7th place, we have pretty much Trulex and Chicho's neighbor, Booga and Aviv. And after that first cash cup of the season, I'm expecting Booga and Aviv to have a very, very solid tournament in Globals this weekend. Booga finally with a good chance to perform on LAN, as this season, him and Aviv are looking very good heading into the tourney. And unlike last year with Threats, they actually have a decent drop spot. Last year, Booga and Threats didn't really land a great drop spot, and I think this year, this drop spot is going to really help this duo perform a lot better than Booga and Threats did last season. But at the end of the day, you have to remember this is going to be Aviv's first time on LAN, and we all know what people think about Aviv. So we're really going to have to see if Aviv can prove the doubters wrong, and also can Booga prove the doubters wrong as well, and finally get a good LAN placement post World Cup. But I really do think 7th is a solid spot for them. Then next in 8th place, I have Bryce and Bolts, who are landing an uncon forecast tower split. And this is one of the most underrated duos on an A. Bryce is always underrated on an A, and I feel like that's kind of just because Bryce is a pretty quiet guy. He doesn't really do too much like tweeting or streaming. Bryce is really a low-key player, and I think he's one of the best NA players, and I think once again, he's going to prove why he's one of the best NA players and have one of the top placements at LAN. The only fear I have for this duo is, are Vico and Flixie going to key them for the forecast tower? And I love this duo, but sadly Vico and Flixie are just a much better fighting duo. But Bryce and Bolts are a sneaky fighting duo, and I think they could put up a good fight versus Vico and Flixie, but you would obviously have to give the upper hand to Vico and Flixie there. So we're just going to have to see how much these duos fight. I honestly think it would affect both of them negatively if they fight too much, so I'm really hoping to see Vico not go to the forecast tower and kind of just try to play with the loot he gets from Reckless. But moving on, in 9th place, I have Cooper and Kanata, and Cooper and Kanata I don't necessarily love heading into the LAN. That's why I kind of have them so far down, even though they're uncontested. And I also have them this far down in my top 10 because they also have the potential to be getting surprise conned by Chap and Teeny. Now, I don't necessarily think Chap and Teeny are going to be landing where they're currently listed at over at the Underworld, as I see them either ending up surprise conning somebody game 1 and landing a completely new drop spot for the tourney, or maybe going into day 2, I just don't really see Chap and Teeny too high on the leaderboards, and I see them ending up landing on somebody during day 2. Now, I don't know if that's going to be somebody like Cooper and Kanata, Baka and Pars, Clicks and Vino, and I've also heard maybe Cammy and Seti are in the mix as well. So we're really going to have to see what happens with Chap and Teeny. Do they land on Cooper and Kanata, or do they not? But I think Cooper and Kanata in the 9th spot isn't too bad. As you guys know, Cooper won last year's LAN, and Kanata is one of the best players of all time. He has tons of LAN experience, so this duo could definitely do a lot better than 9th. Then moving on to 10th place, we have Queasy and Thomas HD, a duo that kind of peaked in Chapter 5 Season 1, but you can never count out Queasy and Thomas HD at LAN. I mean, Queasy's done very well the past 2 years at LAN, and Thomas HD's done pretty well on LAN as well, outside of contesting Kanata last year. But this year, he's figured out it's not a good thing to contest Kanata. But at the end of the day, I think this drop spot is going to kind of limit this duo. It's a decent drop spot. It's a little bit underrated maybe, but at the end of the day, it's kind of edge map. I know they can fizz Launchpad, but there's definitely better drops out there, and I think this drop is just not as good as some of the team's drop spots higher up in my top 10, so I'm just going to keep them in 10th place. Then next in 11th place, we have Baka and Pars, who are uncon, and I think Baka and Pars are once again going to be one of the more sneaky, underrated, like dark horse teams heading into LAN. And I think Baka and Pars uncontested, unlike last year when they were contested at LAN, I think this duo will do a lot better. I think they'll get top 15, maybe even a sneaky top 10, because we know how Pars and Baka play. In that end game, you will see them on the high ground a couple times, and they'll probably end up getting a win or two at LAN. And I think that's going to be very, very good for them. As long as they can stay consistent the other games and get a couple wins, I see them placing very, very well. Then in 12th place, we have Epicwell and Muzz at the Doomstat. And I was torn between which one of these two Doomstat teams I wanted to pick. But at the same time, I could see maybe both of these teams getting top 15. This is a very good drop spot, and I'm expecting little to no fighting between these two duos. But the reason you haven't seen Re and Ritual yet is I just don't really think Re and Ritual over the past 2 seasons have been playing too well. They definitely don't look like the Re and Ritual from Season 1 and Season 2 on NA. So I'm kind of out on them for this LAN, and you're not going to see Reed and Ritual in my top 15. But I have some pretty strong faith that Epicwell and Muzz will do good. And I really hope to see them do good because I really want Epicwell to prove all the doubters wrong and show he's still one of the top players in the world. And also love seeing Muzz do good as well because I think he's one of the best players in the world and arguably one of the most underrated players in the world. Now moving on to 13th place, we have a pick that a lot of people disagreed with me on, and that's Acorn and Cold in 13th place. And I'm going to explain why I have them in 13th place. Acorn and Cold are supposed to be contested by Andalex and Sato at the Brutal Beachhead, but pretty much everybody's expecting them to split this drop spot. Acorn's probably going to split it. Acorn is known to split drop spots if he can in really stacked lobbies like this. But the reason I have them a little bit lower than expected, a lot of people had them getting top 10. I just don't really see it with Acorn and Cold right now. Acorn and Cold pretty much all year outside of Season 1 have basically just tried to be better than everyone and not really put too much practice or time into getting better and prepping for things. And I think that's going to come back to haunt this duo in this Globals lobby. And I think the lack of preparation is going to get to them and they're not going to place as good as people expect. And a lot of people disagree with me. And I'd love to see them do better than getting 13th because everybody knows I'm a big Cold guy. I love seeing Cold do well. And I also love seeing Acorn do well. And at the end of the day, I think Cold is one of the best players in the world. But I'm kind of just not really rocking with them right now. Kind of similar to Reed and Ritual. But these are two duos that could very easily prove me wrong. Then next in 14th place, this is another one that some people kind of disagreed with me on. I have Rezon and Vidil, and you got to hear me out on this one as well. If you take a look at the situation that Rezon and Vidil are landing in, they're currently quote-unquote uncontested at the Doom's Castle, but there's 5 teams landing around this drop spot. And I think that's going to be pretty bad for Rezon and Vidil in the end. And it's going to really lead to some weird scuff games that are going to either make them die early, or one of them's going to die and then they're going to have to play very shambles and reboot and have a pretty shambles game. And I also think Booga and Aviv are absolutely going to farm the Castle Doom for Surge this weekend. So this is honestly one of my predictions where I'm not too sure what's going to happen. I'm just really guessing that with the amount of teams being around this area of the map, it's going to be pretty hard to rotate out of sometimes. And you're also going to get caught by some team hiding somewhere, or you're just going to get caught off guard in general by a team. So that's why I have Vidil and Rezon in 14th. And then rounding out my top 15, I have my only small region duo, King and Phaser. And I really do think King and Phaser can do well from this drop spot. A lot of people think they're not going to do good at Globals because of how they performed on EU. But landing this drop spot uncontested is way different than what they were landing on EU when they were triple contested in FNCS Grand Finals in Season 1. So I'm expecting a lot better performance out of King and Phaser in the FNCS Global Championship this weekend. And there's a couple other small region duos I would like to see do well. I think Keiki and Crazy Dog over on the left side of the map are a very underrated duo, and they were looking very good in NA scrims, even playing on 160 ping. But they are contested at the end of the day, and that's a duo I thought was going to do pretty well if they were uncon. Maybe they still do well contested. We know the OCE teams aren't that good, so that could be a blessing in disguise. That could be free Surge maybe. But overall, these are my top 15 predictions. I want you guys to comment down below what you think of my predictions, which teams you think should be higher or lower. I'm sure a lot of the comments are going to be talking about Rezon, Acorn, and probably Clicks somehow, even though I feel like 5th place for Clicks is a pretty common answer besides the people that think Clicks is going to win. But we all know they're Clicks fans, so they're going to say that anyways. But I'm really excited for the FNCS Global Championship this weekend, and I hope you guys are too. If you guys want to stop by and watch party with me this weekend, I'm going to be watching the FNCS Global Championship on both Twitch and YouTube. Same name, it's going to be on this channel if you want to watch. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel and turn on notifications to not miss the FNCS Global Championship stream, or head over to my Twitch. It's the same exact name. And also, if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to drop a like on it so more people can see my LAN predictions. And hopefully we can reach 15,000 subscribers off of this video, or maybe off of videos for the FNCS Global Championship. My goal for the FNCS Global Championship is to make a video after day one, kind of recapping day one, maybe going over who's popping off, who's not doing so well, and stuff like that. And then a video after day two, recapping who won and some of the leaderboard. That's going to do it for me in this video, guys, going over my predictions for globals. Thank you all for watching it, and I will see you next time.